On behalf of Cork City Libraries, I'm delighted to welcome you to this walking tour of the locations in this year's One City, One Book. This is the 5th year of One City, One Book, and it is a collaboration between Cork City Libraries, the Cork City Council creative team, and is funded by Creative Ireland. Previous writers include Catherine Kerwin and Billy O'Callaghan, and the original one was Frank O'Connor. We're delighted that you are here and taking part in the tour, and I hope you enjoy it as Tadhg walks you through the city.
Hi everybody, and welcome to the Cork One City, One Book virtual tour for 2020. My name is Tadhg Coakley. I'm a writer, and my book, Whatever It Takes, has been chosen as the Cork One City, One Book this year. I'm standing outside the City Library, and I want to thank Patricia Looney and all the library staff for all the support they give to local writers and local writing, and for selecting my book this year. The book is a crime novel set in Cork City, and it has many scenes in various locations around the city, and in this short film I'm going to take you to some of those locations. I'm going to read short excerpts from the book, and I'll say a little bit more about them. So now we go to our first location, which is a very famous place in Cork. I'm standing outside the English Market, a very famous place in Cork on the Grand Parade. It's closed today, but the scene I'm going to read from now takes place on a busy Saturday morning, so you have to imagine Corkonians coming and going doing their shopping. The book tells the story of Detective Garda Tim Collins and his battle of wills against the leading criminal in Cork, Dominic Malloy. One of the families who fall foul of Malloy is the Buckley family, and this reading is from the point of view of the youngest member of that family, Kyle Buckley, who's 14, and he's going to the market. Kyle Buckley, aged 14, sidled up to the counter of Tony Mulcahy Meat Providers in the English Market. He was hot after running down Tarrant Road, then Shandon Street, and along the Coalquay to the Grand Parade, but hardly puffing at all. He was really fit, and he loved his new Nikes. Even though it was Saturday, the market wasn't busy. Usually there was a load of people before him in the queue. "How's the going, Kyle?" Tony said, showing an array of crooked teeth. "How are them dogs of yours?" "Grand thanks," Kyle said. "Have you a few spare bones?" "Oh, we do. Shawnee, get some bones there for the young fella, will ya? In the back fridge, the good ones." He leaned on the glass counter, his rosacea scarred nose shining in the fluorescent light. He grew serious and lifted his 2 fists to his face. "Come here, boy. Are you keeping your guard up?" "I am," said Kyle. "I've training Tuesdays and Thursdays." "Did you run down like I told you?" "I did. I've new runners, Nike." He showed them off. They were bright blue. "Oh, sound," Tony said. He handed over the red and blue striped bag of bones and bits of meat. "Wait, I'll double bag that there for you. And there's a few chops for later. How's your mam?" "She's fine," Kyle said, and lowered his head. His shuffling intensified. "Mind yourself, Kyle," Tony said, and turned to his next customer, a small Asian woman with a headscarf. Kyle jogged away out the door of the market. Tony glanced after him and shook his head sadly. So that's Kyle Buckley, and Whatever It Takes is the first of a series of books, and in the next book, which will appear in 2021, Kyle will appear a lot more, and his sister Jackie as well, and that book is going to be called Everything He's Got. And now we go to our next location, which is nearby. Grand Parade is a well-known street in Cork, but what a lot of people may not know is that the Irish name for the Grand Parade is Shráid an Capel Buí, the Street of the Yellow Horse. And the reason for that is that behind me there used to be a statue of King George III of England on a horse, and that horse was yellow. King George and his horse ended up in the River Lee many years ago, but the legacy of the horse still lives on, ironically in the Irish name for the Grand Parade, Shráid an Capel Buí. Cork Market Street is one of my favourite streets in Cork, and I think what I love most about it is the piece of street art behind me. It's a sculpture by Seamus Murphy, probably our most famous sculptor, and it was cast in 1937. It depicts a woman in a black shawl holding some onions. It's called the Onion Seller. The women who worked in the markets in Cork Market Street didn't wear coats, they wore shawls, and they were called shawlies. And this is Seamus Murphy's tribute to them, a very beautiful statue. And now we go to our next location, just around the corner. This is the Coakley, or Cork Market Street, and a few scenes in the book take place here. In particular, one Saturday morning, Collins likes to wander around the food market that takes place here on Saturdays. But this particular morning, he's being watched. There's somebody following him and looking at him. And the person who's watching him, his name is Thomas Mazur. He's a very dangerous man. He's a former soldier, and now he's working for Dominic Malloy. And Malloy and Mazur have planned something against Collins. He doesn't know this, but the reader does, which creates a certain amount of tension in the scene. So this scene is from Mazur's point of view. Mazur smiled. He could not wait to get out of this hole and away to Spain. Spain would be good, lots of fun, lots of Romanians and Moldovans and Chechens, African refugees, undocumented losers, nobody to come looking for them. He liked the women best, the way they squealed. Collins went into the cafe and Mazur took his phone from his pocket. He has gone into cafe. I follow now. Right, Malloy said. Is your woman in place? Yes, they give her job last week. She works every day. Do they know what to do? Yes, I train her. She knows. Okay, let me know when it's done, Malloy said and hung up. Mazur approached the cafe and opened the big door. He was met by a blaze of noise and heat. He looked around as though for a free table. He didn't want to sit too close to Collins, but he did want a good view. He could see Katarzyna approach Collins and take his order. She seemed nervous. She had better do this right, or she would suffer. He sat at an empty table about 4 meters from Collins. It was not close enough for witnesses to notice him. He was just another person in a cafe. He smiled. This was going to be good. And if you want to find out what happens in the cafe, you're going to have to read the book. And now we go to our next location, alongside the river. I'm standing outside the Opera House with Lavitt Quay behind me. Lavitt Quay features a lot in the book because it's where Collins lived. He lives in a third-floor apartment looking down on the river, on Pope's Quay opposite, on St. Mary's Church, and on Shandon and North Cathedral in the distance. To the northwest, Grana stretches up to the Church of the Assumption on the horizon. The scene I'm going to read from now takes place in Collins' apartment. He comes home late one night and he notices something suspicious on Pope's Quay. So it's from Collins' point of view in his apartment. He placed the glass and bottle on the small table, moved away from the window and paused the music on his phone. The sudden silence was grating and putting him on edge. He picked up the binoculars from the low bookshelf and, standing as far back as possible from the window, he focused them on the van. The tiny but unmistakable glow of a cigarette being pulled upon shone and faded. He noted the registration number and called the station. Mick Collins here, he said. Detective Collins, Mick Murphy said with clipped asperity, his voice as tight as new rope. They went back a long way and the road had been rocky. Collins pictured his thin lips pursed in disapproval. Mick, can you run a number for me, please? A Ford Transit van, white maybe cream, 02C97412. It's parked across from me on Pope's Quay. Right, I'll call you back. Thanks. He put the binoculars to his eyes again and waited for the call. The phone rang. Collins, he answered. It belongs to a garage off Blackwater Drive. Shawnee McDonough runs it. Remember him? We got him for procuring a few years ago. Collins winced. He tried to think. He watched the van. It seemed so innocuous. Is there a problem, Collins? Mick said. I'm not sure, he said. There's somebody inside it. Yeah, I remember him all right. Thanks, Mick. Are the traffic cameras live on Christie Ring Bridge? The one facing west down Pope's Quay? I think so. I didn't hear of any problems. Good, thanks. I'm coming into the station to have a look. Will you send a car around, please? It's probably nothing, but still. Collins hung up. Shawnee McDonough, not good. And in our next scene, we'll find out when Collins finds out who's in that car on Pope's Quay. Lavitt's Quay stretches all the way from Patrick's Bridge to Shandon Bridge, where I'm standing now, and it's called after two brothers, James and William Lavitt. They were Huguenots who came here in the early 18th century, fleeing persecution, religious persecution in France. Both of them became Lord Mayors of Cork, and that's why Lavitt's Quay is called after them. We have refugees in Cork again today, and hopefully before too long, one of them will be the Lord Mayor, and there will have streets called after them too. And now we find out what happens on Pope's Quay when Collins finds out who's in the van. This scene takes place on Pope's Quay, directly opposite the river from Collins' apartment. And it takes place the night after he finds out who's in the van. It turns out the person in the van is a man called Jason Townsend, and Collins knows him. Townsend's sister dies early in the book, and Collins blames Townsend for his sister's death. So he's not happy. The scene takes place in the middle of the night as Collins is approaching the van. Collins went on to Camden Quay and stepped over the plastic railing surrounding some building materials by the river wall. He picked up two large rust-coloured bricks from a pile and stalked alongside the parked cars towards the van. A look up and down the quays and across the river showed no sign of life. He walked on along the footpath beside the river, the bricks held low. They each had two curved ridges on one side. He placed them on the ground beside the car. Crouching down, he pressed a hand against the door and squeezed his eyes shut. Don't lose it in there, he thought. Jesus, just don't. He forced himself upright and picked up the bricks. He checked up and down the quays again. He crossed the road. He listened outside the van. Stillness, silence. He peeked in through the grime and saw a figure lying huddled in a sleeping bag. Glancing left and right, he stood away from the rear end of the van, stretched back his arms and flung the two bricks through the windows. He put his hand inside the broken right window and quickly opened the door. Townsend was rising slowly, moaning. The brick on the left had met its mark. Collins hopped into the van, took out a flashlight from inside his hoodie and closed the door behind him. He recoiled at the smell. Detritus lined the floor. Broken glass crunched under his feet. He shone the light into Townsend's face. A familiar, pathetic face, wasted by addiction and self-neglect. Blood poured from a cut on his temple. Collins held his pointed, stubbled chin sideways, examining the wound. Townsend moaned, pressing a hand to his head. Collins put the light down, turned him over quickly and tied his hands behind his back with a plastic tie. You, he said, picking up the two bricks, after what you did to your sister. Townsend cowered beneath him. We leave it there. I think we know what's going to happen next. A lot of people in Cork think that Pope's Quay is called after the Pope in Rome, but that's not actually the case. It's called after a woman who's known as the Widow Pope. We don't know her first name. She was a merchant in the 18th century, and in 1718 she applied for permission to build her own quay, which was a very valuable asset because this was the dockland area of Cork at this time, with ships lined up on both sides of the river. And now we cross the river for the final location in our tour. We're back in the Coakley for the last scene in the Cork One City One Book virtual tour, and I'm going to lighten the tone a little bit here. One of the backstories about Collins is that he's a former inter-county hurler. He played Cork for several years and won 3 All-Irelands. But there's one match in particular that Cork lost against Kilkenny, and it's the one he's often asked about, and he doesn't like to talk about it. He's looking in McCarthy's window and he notices a present behind him. He looked at the range of books now in the window and was amazed. A middle-aged man passed behind him. Collins glanced back, making eye contact. Mistake. He knew him from somewhere, a hurling club he thought, in the city, St. Finbarr's. The man turned around and made a beeline for him. No escape. How's it going, Collins? How's the form? Hi, how are you? How are they all in the bars? Collins replied. You're all right, boy, all right. Shocking bad hurling team again this year, but the minors weren't too bad, like. Footballers are going well. Is Mickey Hall still involved? I haven't seen him for a while. Mickey Hall? No, boy, we don't see Mickey no more. I think he's out in Carrigaline or somewhere. Jesus, the two of you had some battles, though. The county final in 91? I thought you were going to run out of ash to break off each other. Mickey is sound. We always left it on the pitch. Come here, the Cork seniors could do with someone like you now, Collins. A bit of steel. They're gone fierce soft altogether. It's different times too. You can't do the kind of stuff we did anymore. With all the cameras, you can't get away with anything these days. Yeah, but they're gone fierce soft. They give up, Collins. They give up too easy altogether. I don't know, boy. Collins would bet he'd never pucked a ball in his life, nor faced down a man swinging a hurley at him. Different times, Teddy, different times. Mind yourself. Collins had remembered the man's name and made to move away on the strength of it. But come here, Collins, one question. I have to ask it. We were talking about the 97 final the other night in the pub. Collins tensed, then bristled. That bloody match. See you, Teddy. Tell Mickey Hall I was asking for him. He moved away towards a food stall. And that concludes the Cork One City One Book virtual tour for 2020, featuring Whatever It Takes. One of the big challenges in crime writing is to have an authentic sense of place, and I hope I've achieved that in my book. Big thank you to Cork City Libraries for all their support for local writers and local writing. Big thank you to Waterstone's Cork and to Creative Ireland too. Keep safe, everybody, and keep on reading. Thanks for watching.